Hi, thank you for clicking on Lazy Girl Reads. I decided to turn on camera and talk to you about a couple of books that I read recently that I really like. So the first one of these books is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. And I listened to this on audiobook. And I'm sure you know, if you've ever listened to audiobooks, sometimes the narration really enhances that reading experience, really kind of brings the characters to life, and sometimes it really doesn't. But in this particular book, I thought it was great. The big thing right out of the gate for me was kind of the pronunciation of some of the names and places that I feel like I would have struggled with if I had physically read this book. It was, seamless. So it didn't take me out of the story, which sometimes that can happen for me when I'm reading a book. If the names are unfamiliar to me, so I'm struggling with how they would be pronounced, even though I'm reading it, it's all in my head. I try to, tease it out. And so sometimes that can pull me out of a story for a minute. But I didn't have any of that with this particular story. So this is a retelling of Achilles and Patroclus, and it's their love story. And I liked it so much. So I had seen a couple of booktubers review this. That's the reason why I wanted to read it, watch it, read it. It was because of that. I saw Nicole Gallagher talk about it, and um, a couple other people talk about it as well. I'm trying to think. But either way, I did not catch, for whatever reason, that Patroclus is the narrator. In my own head, for whatever reason, I assumed that Achilles was going to be the narrator because of the title. And so I was a little confused at the beginning for a minute. I eventually figured it out, and it didn't take long. But just so you know, if you're like me and you see the title, The Song of Achilles, and you assume that Achilles is going to be your narrator, he's not. It's Patroclus. So you're welcome. Anyway, this book starts out when Patroclus is like, I don't know, like 8 or 9 years old, and then kind of goes through. And he is not like a sports kind of kid. He doesn't enjoy the warrior training. He's not particularly good at it. And his dad is just an asshole to him because of that. Like, he wants him to be like this, super tough, boy, rough and tumble kind of kid. And he's just not. Like, he's just not that kid. He's a much more sensitive kid. He likes music, he likes poetry, and his dad is just a complete ass. So that's kind of their dynamic in their relationship. He's a prince, and the other boys are super mean to him. They bully him because they know his dad's not going to do anything about it, because his dad acts exactly the same way towards him. And so he doesn't have any friends. Like, he's very much alone, even though he's surrounded by people. And so I really felt for him, and really, I don't know, I just felt bad for him, like the poor kid. So the first time that he ever sees Achilles, they don't really meet per se, but Achilles is getting a prize, an award from Patroclus's father. There's like a competition. And so Achilles, comes up to the king, Patroclus's dad, and his dad is giving him the award or whatever. And so Patroclus is next to his dad in his little prince seat, and that's the first time they see each other. And they're like, 9. And so then Achilles goes back to where he lives with his dad, who's the king of that land, and Patroclus is living his life. So it goes through some different things that happen. Him and his dad go on a trip. I don't want to tell you too much because I don't want to give away a bunch of stuff, but they go on a trip and then they come back, and his dad, something happens. Patroclus does something by accident, and his dad banishes him because, as I've already mentioned, he's a jackass. So he banishes his son, sends him away. But the good part about that is that sets up the ability for Patroclus and Achilles to end up in the same place again. And so they end up being friends. And you see that friendship kind of grow as they grow up. So they're about 10 around this time when they first start to develop this friendship. And then they, you watch them kind of grow up and this friendship develop, and then they eventually fall in love. And they are not perfect. They make some choices that are um, questionable. They make some choices that are just flat out bad. They love each other really hard though, and I was so into their love story. I was rooting for them, and it was a good time. There's a lot of war kind of scenes in this book because it's the whole situation of going to war with Troy and trying to get Helen back because they had stolen her from the king she was married to, and like it's a whole thing. So I normally would not gravitate towards books with this much war in them, and I knew going in like that was part of the gig because it's the retelling of Achilles. But I still really liked it. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. And like I said, I was rooting for them. Like I wanted them to make it. So there was that. And they both of them make, like I said, some crappy choices and have to suffer the consequences because of it. But you see how they get there. And Achilles is in a unique position because he's the son of a king and he's also the son of a goddess. So he's half god and half man. And from the beginning, like the minute he's born, he is someone that people have to listen to, that he has authority, like nothing bad ever happens to him really as he's growing up because he can do whatever he wants. And so there's a certain amount of confidence, but also, I guess, entitlement that comes along with that. There's certain things that he does that I don't think a person who didn't have that background, didn't have that experience growing up would necessarily do. I mean, I don't know for sure. I personally don't know anyone who is the son of a king and the son of a god. So, there's that. But I would imagine, given that parentage, that it influences your character in certain ways, and it makes certain choices seem reasonable to you, that might not to someone else who wasn't half god. Just throwing it out there. So anyway, I saw a booktuber that reviewed this that said she didn't enjoy this book because she didn't like Achilles. And at first when I was reading it, I was like, why wouldn't you like Achilles? Like, he seems like a nice kid. And then he does something that I'm like, oh, maybe that's why you didn't like him. But they like I said, they both make questionable choices. They both make some bad choices, but they also make some good choices. And at the end of the day, at the end of it all, they love each other so much. And so I really had a great time with this book. I thought it was really fun, and I would recommend the audiobook. I thought the narration was excellent. The second book that I read was Don't Forget to Write by Sara Goodman Confino, and I had such a good time with this book. So this book was a Kindle Unlimited pick for me, and so I had it just save in my Kindle, and I was going on a drive. So I was like, I need something that has an audiobook option for me, and this one did. So that's why I picked it up. So fun. So this is the story of Madeline, and it's set in early 1960s, and she lives in New York. And Madeline gets busted for making out with the rabbi's son. And this is not a spoiler because this literally is the first thing that happens in the book. She gets busted for making out with the rabbi's son, and not only is she making out with the rabbi's son, but she's making out with him in the rabbi's office during the service. So when they get busted, like literally the entire congregation is present and knows about it. So it's a whole scandalous thing, right? So her dad is pissed, so mad. So some stuff happens, but ultimately her dad sends her to her aunt's house, and it's her maternal aunt, or it's her maternal great aunt, I think. Either way, it's Aunt Ada, and I freaking love Aunt Ada. She is something else. And as an aunt myself, I have a certain affinity for that type of story anyway. But this is it's a story of Marilyn kind of figuring out who she is. She makes some poor choices and has to suffer the consequences of those choices, but she also grows up as a result of that. And you see her like go through all of it, like the process of making the choice, then she does it, the consequences that happen from it, and how she grows and learns from it. And so it's really that kind of coming of age story. Being set in the 1960s is great because there still is a lot of, limitations on young women and what the expectations of them are. There's still a lot of, the whole scandalous nature of being caught making out with the rabbi's son kind of thing in a way that probably wouldn't be the same today, in the world of OnlyFans and all different other kind of things. There are things happening that are way more scandalous than making out with the rabbi's son. But the setting of the 1960s makes it modern enough that there's still a lot of options, and the world is opening up to women in ways that it had not been before, but also restrictive enough that it makes it realistic, like that this scandal like would matter, and why her dad is so pissed and all of that. So I really, oh my god, I love this story so much. So it's like I said, it's Marilyn coming of age, figuring out who she is, who she wants to be, what she wants to do with her life, and then how she's going to make that happen. And Aunt Ada is everything. So she is a matchmaker in the Jewish community in Pennsylvania. So Marilyn's in New York. She gets sent to Pennsylvania to her aunt's house. And then at one point, her and her aunt leave Pennsylvania and go down the shore in New Jersey. And so they are there at the beach in New Jersey for the summer. And a majority of the story takes place there in that setting. And Aunt Ada is everything, man. She is very no nonsense. She is not messing around with Maryland, and so they're very kind of prickly with each other at first. Like Maryland doesn't have a choice but to be there, so she has to suck it up. She's not happy about that, and Aunt Ada knows she's not happy about that. But it is what it is, and so you see their relationship develop. So this Aunt Ada is someone that Marilyn did not know growing up, was like kind of knew vaguely that she was there, that she had this aunt, but they didn't have a relationship before this. They were not close. So you see their relationship develop and their mutual respect and then eventually love develop. And that was a beautiful thing. And there's also a love story for Marilyn, and you see like the trials and tribulations of a love life of a young 20-year-old woman in 1960 trying to figure it all out. And so there's some romance there. This is a fade to black romance, so the spicy scenes are not super spicy at all, but they're very sweet, and it was well done. I really enjoyed that piece of it. So there is that romance component of it, but really the bigger story, at least to me, that really resonated and that really touched me was the coming of age of Marilyn and her figuring out the type of woman that she wanted to be and didn't want to be, and how she wanted to live her life, and then how she was going to make that happen, and all the pieces of that, and how Aunt Ada fits into that and really supports it, and in some ways challenges her and pushes her, like, okay, you said this is what you want to do, let's see it, what do you got? And so that was so much fun to see. And there's a quote that's from Aunt Ada in this book that I'm gonna share with you because it was so good. Like, it was just so good. So I'm gonna grab my little reading journal here that I keep, and the one that I'm using this year is a traveler's journal so that I can add a lot to it. But the quote that I wrote from Aunt Ada that I love so much was, "Live the life you want, love whom you want." And you'll see when you read it, like how that plays into different aspects of the story. But I loved that quote so much. I love Aunt Ada so much. It was such a good time. So as I said, I started out this book as an audiobook because I was driving. And so I wanted something to do that. But this ended up being a combo audio physical read for me, because when I got to the hotel, like as soon as I had something to eat, I was popping open my Kindle and I was reading it physically. So if I was able, whenever I was sitting down somewhere and I was able to read, I was reading it physically. The second that I had something to do or that I was in the car, I had that audiobook on because I wanted to, I wanted to know what was going to happen next. So I was invested. I cared so much about these characters. Um, I had such a good time with this book. So Don't Forget to Write by Sara Goodman Confino. Thank you so much, Sara, for writing this book. I loved it so much, and I highly, highly recommend it. So those are a couple books that I recently read that I had such a good time with, and so I thought I would share that with you. Thanks for hanging out with me today, and I will look forward to seeing you again when I've got some more books to talk about. Have a good one. Bye.